D-Day, June 6, 1944. America and our allies landed armies by sea at Normandy, France beaches, resolved to rescue and free Europe. Captured by Germany's war machine under new dictator Adolf Hitler. God alone graciously and miraculously granted America victory and preserved our freedom from attacks of this insane German dictator who sunk 608 American cargo ships at sea before a war-weary, selfish-minded America would engage and fight. America joined World War II more to stop this expensive cargo loss at sea than our noble duty to rescue Europe or Jews being slaughtered daily in Holocaust ovens. Sad to admit, but truth must prevail. U.S. Army manuals say the Army began using the codes H-hour and D-Day during World War I to indicate the time or date of an operation's start. Military planners would write of events planned to occur on H-hour or D-Day long before the actual dates and times of the operations would be known, or in order to keep plans secret. And so the D may simply refer to the actual day of invasion or secret action. D-Day's impressive facts and sheer numbers involved in the operations and logistics involved great unity. An invading army had not crossed the unpredictable, dangerous English Channel since 1688. And once the massive force set out, there was no turning back. The 5,000 vessel armada stretched out as far as the eye could see, transporting over 150,000 men and nearly 30,000 vehicles across the channel to the French beaches. 6 parachute regiments, over 13,000 men, were flown from 9 British airfields and over 800 planes. More than 300 planes dropped 13,000 bombs over coastal Normandy immediately in advance of the invasion. By nightfall on D-Day, June 6, 1944, more than 9,000 Allied soldiers were dead or wounded. But more than 100,000 had made it ashore, securing French coastal villages. And within weeks, supplies were being unloaded at Utah and Omaha beachheads at the rate of over 20,000 tons per day. Captured Germans were sent to the American prisoner of war camps at the rate of 30,000 POWs per month from D-Day until Christmas 1944. 33 detention facilities were in Texas alone. In the pre-television World War II days, Americans got their breaking news from the radios. London-based American journalist George Hicks made history with his radio broadcast from the deck of the USS Ancon at the start of the D-Day invasion. And let me quote him. "You see the ships lying in all directions, just like black shadows on the gray sky." He described to his listeners, "Now planes are going overhead, heavy fire now just behind us, bombs bursting on the shore and along in the convoys." His report, including the sounds of heavy bombardment, the sirens, low-flying planes, and shouting, brought Americans to the front line through their radios. With all the chaos and confusion and fear and prayer and victory excitement, and death. God intervened with mercy to overcome a certain disaster in the making, caused by horrible mistakes made by a very good man, General Omar Bradley, who chose a frontal assault with foot soldiers instead of heavy tanks that normally clear the way for foot soldiers. Our soldiers were forced to endure an 11-mile boat ride in choppy seas instead of the normal 5 to 7 miles, just to be sure our battleships were far enough away from the shore guns. Longer boat rides caused seasick, wobbly-legged soldiers with 68-pound backpacks. Many were drowned during landing or slaughtered horribly by German crack 3rd Division troops, not the reserves that American intelligence said were manning those German guns. Our victory came only because German guns ran out of bullets as we cut off their supply lines behind them with our crack paratroopers. Our soldiers just kept landing and kept dying until we finally simply caused the Germans to run out of bullets. That is the extent of the horrible, massive slaughter of our heroes on the Normandy beaches. Frontal assault, uphill, through barbed wire, landmines, and machine guns. Impossible by foot soldiers alone. Our heroes could see the slaughter on the beach as boat after boat brought scared, seasick soldiers closer and closer to shore as they watched their probable fate play out before their eyes, realizing they had only seconds to live. Yet, our American heroes did not shrink from doing their duty or fail to engage the enemy as best they could. Their sheer bravery and devotion to America is as amazing as any event of war in history. No warriors were braver. Somehow, some way, our American warrior heroes found a way to not only survive, but win the victory. Using ingenuity and good old American know-how. A gift from God who rescues and delivers, always, today and on this day in 1944. The invasion of France on June 6, 1944 was a tragic triumph of intelligence, coordination, secrecy, and planning. The bold, courageous attack was also a tremendous risk. Ultimately, it succeeded because of individual soldiers' bravery in combat and a merciful God who caused miracle after miracle on the early morning of June 6, 1944. Then 2nd Lieutenant Chaplain Burkhalter landed on Omaha Beach in Normandy. And after seeing the movie Saving Private Ryan, I realized no words I could come up with could possibly explain what he had to go through. So I won't even try. Instead, I'll use his words in his letter that he wrote to his wife Mabel shortly after the D-Day invasion. In a classic wartime coincidence, a copy of the letter was wired to the Miami Daily News, where a photo of John checking the identification of a dead German soldier had arrived several hours earlier. The letter and photo were printed on Sunday, August 6th, 1944. The headline said, "God was on the beach on D-Day." Imagine that in a newspaper today. Chaplain Burkhalter tells power of prayers. That was a subheading. And here's what his letter said, quote, Dear Mabel, when my part of the division landed on D-Day, there were impressions made on my mind that will never leave it. Just before landing, we could see heavy artillery shells bursting all up and down the beach at the water's edge under well-directed fire. As I stood in line waiting to get off the LCI to a smaller craft to go into shore, I was looking toward land and saw a large shell fall right on a landing craft full of men. I had been praying quite a bit through the night as we approached the French coast, but now I began praying more earnestly than ever. Danger was everywhere. Death was not far off. I knew that God alone is the maker and preserver of life, who loves to hear and answer prayer. We finally landed, and our assault craft was miraculously spared, for we landed with no shells hitting our boat. Reporter Ernie Pyle came ashore this morning, the morning after the assault rather, and after seeing the results of what took place the day before, he wrote in his article for the Stars and Stripes, quote, Now that it's all over, it seems to me a pure miracle we ever took the beach at all. The enemy had a long time to fix up the beach. The beach was covered with large pebbles to prevent tank movements, and mines were everywhere. The enemy was well dug in and had set up well-prepared positions for machine guns and had well-chosen places for sniping. Everything was to their advantage and to our disadvantage, except one thing: the righteous cause for which we are fighting: liberation and freedom. For the moment, our advantage was in the abstract, and theirs was in the concrete. Bodies of injured men were all around. Sad and horrible sights were plentiful. In from the beach were high hills we had to climb. We crawled most of the way up as we filed by those awful scenes going up the hill and moving inland. I prayed hard for those suffering men, scattered here and there and seemingly everywhere. We filed over the hill as shells were falling on the beach back of us, meaning death for others who were still coming in. Later, one of the soldiers told me that on this occasion, he saw a shell land right on top of a wounded man and blow him to bits. Before going over the top of the hill, we crouched for a while close to the ground, just below the top. While lying there, I did most of my praying. The shells were exploding all around us, and I knew, that God alone was able to keep them away from us. I shall never forget those moments. I'm sure that during that time I was drawn very close to God. Later, about 10 of us were crossing along the edge of a field when we heard sniper bullets whiz by. We all fell to the ground as we lay there hugging the earth that we may escape shrapnel from shell fire and bullets from snipers' guns. The birds were singing beautifully in the trees close by. As I lay there listening, I thought of the awfulness of it all. The birds were singing, and we human beings were trying to kill each other. We are the greatest of God's creation, made in the image of God. And here, human blood was being spilt everywhere. Nobody can love God better than when he is looking death square in the face and talks to God and then sees God come to the rescue. As I look back through hectic days just gone by to that hellish beach, I agree with Ernie Pyle that it was a pure miracle we even took the beach at all. Yes, there were a lot of miracles on the beach that day. God was on the beach D-Day. I know he was because I was talking with him.